it's the most value. It's the most valuable franchise in existence.
Welcome everyone to another Friday Mortgage Coach Trust Engine Plug and Play SM Winning by Noon Mastermind. I'm Todd Bookspan. I'm subbing for Dave Savage, so I get to add all those extra titles. If you're new to this room, Dave and I started doing these Friday masterminds back in 2016 of all crazy times, and we've been really gifted to have all of you join us over all of these years, some amazing guests. And over the last 4 years or so, we've had none other than Deborah Bird as our co-host with us every week. What's up, Deborah?
Happy Friday, and let this be your all's reminder, 3 weeks until Valentine's Day, so go get your reservations if you haven't already, okay? So
I took your advice and I actually made reservations. 4:45 is the reservations I had to get, but we're gray hair. We like to eat early, and taking my wife to a very nice sushi place that we really enjoy. So we normally don't plan. In fact, last Valentine's Day I took our daughter out. I don't even know where my wife was. She must have been out of town, but
She's probably with her
super
boyfriend.
excited. Super excited. Appreciate those reminders. Always, Deborah, you making the rest of us, look good. And, I think it's appropriate, you wives, spouses, significant others, you can make reservations too. That's, we won't, I don't think we would complain. It doesn't always have to be all on us, but, I do take that responsibility in my family. So I love that, but I'm super excited today. We're bringing on someone who's always been a special guest whenever we've had him. We've got Hunter Marckwardt from, you're Northern California, right, Hunter?
Northern California. And Todd, congratulations. It took Dave 7 years to get my last name right, and you just came out of the chutes. So thank you.
Well, I'm glad, because I was like, as I was saying it, I was like, gosh, I think that's how it's pronounced. I'm not the best at that, but I've long ago, once I realized that, Dave grew up with dyslexia, then it kind of, I was okay with his name pronunciation. And, Dave, gosh, forgive me if you're, I know you're going to watch this, but I love it. It's one of the things I appreciate about him, because he definitely always wants to get it right. And so kind of for those watching this who don't know who you are, can you kind of give a little bit about, your region and kind of your own production and branch and all kind of what your mortgage role looks like?
Sure. So I'm Northern California cross country mortgage. I've been producing for 18 years. I've got a branch, and then I help run a division for the company. So my own production, 2024 was 152 million. And then as a division, I actually think I gave the number wrong last time. I think we finished the year at 2.4 billion. So yeah, just a lot of, like everybody, a lot of different things going on, a lot of different hats, but all good.
How many loan officers in your division?
We always, I mean, if they're all watching it, we want everyone to produce. So I would say there's 190 that are in there, and we could use a little more production from some of them.
Spoken like a true leader. And I really wanted to highlight that, because I want you to all realize that, not only does Hunter have this leadership role over this, almost $2.5 billion region, almost 200 folks, he's still down in the trenches alongside of all of you. And I do think, as we kind of get into today's topic, I want you to be thinking about that, right? I mean, thinking about, what that must look like. You're not sitting around eating bonbons in the morning. You talked about you did a 4-mile run this morning. So, I know you're like, you have a pretty strategic approach to your life. And one of the things that always sparks Dave to invite you on here is you've got this ongoing Sunday email/blog now called Sunday Thoughts that, you've been putting out pretty consistently for how many years now?
I'm like 11 years into it.
11 years, right? So think about that, guys.
Years.
Just the tipping point, right? You do it once, because I got to imagine you never thought you'd be doing it for 11 years, right?
No. I mean, it started off as an email to some coaching students, and it just, it was like they liked the first week. There were 12 people on it. And I'm like, well, if they like the first week, I'll do the second week. And then a couple other, they forwarded it to a couple people, and it just kind of, it grew from there. And it really is. I mean, it's just like, I feel kind of silly even talking about it with you guys, because Dave and I've talked about it so many times, but it's just stuff that's going on in my brain. Sometimes it's personal, sometimes it's professional, sometimes it's a book I read. It's just, and it helps me. I mean, I think for everybody, it's like the more stuff that you write down, the more stuff that you focus on more than once, you know, that to me, being positive, like good habits, honestly, it does not come natural to me. So me forcing myself into this stuff is helpful, and me having to review. I mean, like if you looked at like I've got little post-it notes, right? Like eat the frog, like I mean, just like different little things in my head to help me like eliminate what doesn't serve me, be the best version of me. I've got my passwords, you know, I mean, so I'm just, you know, I'm a mess just trying to get better a little bit each day.
I
Truly.
love
Hey,
that.
I
No,
would love to know those of you who are either on live via Facebook or on Zoom, put in the chat, do you have a sticky note on your monitor at the moment? And what does it say? I know you do, Todd. You do as well, right?
today I don't actually have one that's on my monitor, believe it or
Wow, I'm
not.
surprised.
But I have my, I've got this little thing called Win by Noon in front of me. So I've got my stuff
Yeah.
right here. And so this is just Todd's version of a sticky note is all the things that I say to myself every day in here, right? My reminders, right? It's, it says BWC for Be World Class. Jonathan Roach is my coach. And that's just really, for me, has so many different levels to it, on a professional level, on a personal level, as a husband, as a dad, as a friend, all the other things that, that really matter. But it kind of, as I hear, Hunter talking about this whole idea of taking one day and then it's the next week and then it's the next week. I mean, to me, Deborah, it's almost like the social media analogy, right? Is that people, they start and then, the thing that you did, Hunter, was you kept going, right? Most people, they do social media and then they stop, right, Deborah, before they ever get to where they're trying to go. And so I just think there's this whole idea of persistence, of doing it and getting it done. And, you kind of said it, Hunter, earlier before everyone got on. I mean, there's days where you don't feel like doing it, you don't do it. And but you're, I got to imagine you're at least 48 plus weeks a year, right? You don't skip too
I
many.
would, yeah, exactly. I think I probably take off 4 or 5 times. And one of my buddies just said I should just take some of my old, like the good ones from the past. But yeah, and I agree with you totally, Todd. I mean, I think even, whether or not it's leadership, loan officers, realtors, anyone that's watching this, it's like it's consistency, right? Like anybody, like if I close my eyes and I find people that I trust, like if you think of the top, or just 3 names of people that you really trust and respect, more than likely one of the things that they represent is consistency, right? And I think, and most of the time too, I like to go both ways. I like to go 3 people that I trust and 3 people that I don't trust, right? Like there's people that won't show up. That when you ask them to do something, they likely won't do it. There's people that you have to put the reminder on your email. Like I have some people that I work with, Erica, my partner, like I know that if I send her an email, I don't need to set a reminder to come back and check. Like it will get done, period. There's other people where you have to, you copy yourself because you have to go back and check because you're 50-50 on them getting it done. I don't want to be that person, right? So that's why I work on my own consistencies in everything I do.
Well, and something we talked about right before we went live is that it ends up bringing a level of accountability where it's like self-leadership, where
Totally.
and that's the same thing with social media. That's what I love about it is, I'm sure you don't obsess on your open rates, and that's not like the real motive behind you sharing your insights and your thoughts, but through the journey and the process, it's reflective, it's giving you clarity, and you are improving as a human, while it also is allowing other people to connect with you and feel like they're on the journey with you and also improve themselves, which is what I love about social. But with both of you guys both, like Todd, y'all started these Friday calls like 8 years ago. Sounds like, Hunter, you started your blog like 11 years ago. It didn't really seem like you did it with this vision, but you did it consistently, and look what happens over time. And then you look at your very first maybe blog that you ever published, or Todd, some of y'all's first Friday mastermind calls, where I have even looked at those, and the quality, like the video quality is not great, the audio is not fantastic, but you get better with more reps. And to me, that's just part of being a professional and starting with self-leadership and accountability, to have something
Deborah,
valuable.
you'll kill me. Mine's just email. I don't even know what my open rate is. I mean, I don't even
That's
know.
great.
Yeah.
That's
I mean,
fantastic.
I hit the send button,
Yeah. I mean,
I get
that's like going to the
responses. That's
gym.
my only indication is I get some, I get response. It is funny talking about different things. Like if it's a leadership thing, you get things from a certain audience. If it's personal, you get things from other people, but but I don't know. I have no idea. I'm actually glad if I had the
Yes.
open rate and then I went and looked at, it's like, holy crap.
But see,
for
I feel
better
like
or
that's
worse.
why, to Todd's point, that's why people get so frustrated with socials. The motive may not be pure, where you're truly giving with no expectation. It's like we obsess on vanity metrics and think, oh, it's not working. When you have, even if just one person saw that post and it impacted their
Yeah.
day, is that enough for you? Like, so I love that you don't look at that,
Yeah.
actually.
Hey, real quick, Hunter, if someone wants to sign up for it, I know one of your friends, unbeknownst to you, created a landing page where you can read
Yeah.
past and sign up. Where would they go for that?
You just go to I'm not so old to say www, but the truth is it is like when I try to just put in Sunday thoughts, it like kicks me out. If you go www.sundaythoughts.com, you'll see Sunday thoughts, but there's also a little link on the left to sign up. It's pretty obvious when you go to the
That's
site.
awesome. That's
Yeah.
awesome. And let me just, again, I'll always be transparent on it. When I got in the business, I did a pre like social media stuff. There was this video service, Brian Stevens, Frank Gray, Think Big, Talk. I don't know what it was, but whatever it was, I did this thing and I sent out this video every week called 2 Minutes with Todd. And ultimately, what I did was I took some of the other industry newsletters that everyone sent out. And, when you would sign up your realtors, they'd be like, great, I only get this from 9 loan officers now. And so I just took that and I put my own spin on it, like a little personal thing. And then I kind of went through what was going on in the bond market and what were the upcoming economic pieces. And then I would type out the bullet points on it. So the people who didn't want to watch my video would read it. The people who didn't want to read actually would listen to the video. And I did that really consistently for a long time. And then I got to a point where we had this challenge in my office. And I used that as my challenge because I'd become inconsistent with it. And I had to write a check. It was a big check at the time for me. I think it was 500 or $1,000. It was a blank check I handed over to the coach. And it was if I didn't post it every week, then he got to write the check to whomever he wanted, organization wise. And could have been an organization I hated. It could have been an organization he loved. It didn't really matter. And the embarrassing thing is the last time I sent out that video was the week after that contest ended. I got my check back. And then I stopped. I lost that accountability piece, which is so bizarre. And so, Deborah gives me a hard time all the time if I don't have my videos ready to go for my stroll, my walk and talks, as they're called now, going on. So I love the accountability piece. So I just say that with all of you because I bet you're a bit like me and have started things and failed. But it's just not too late to jump out there and get going, which is probably a good lead into sort of the article that you wrote last week, which is kind of what sparked Dave to say, Hunter, we got to have you on and talk about this because I loved it, right? Comparison versus comparison. So how would you describe this to those who are watching who didn't read the article, didn't read your email?
So I thought this is from December 1st, and sorry to correct you, but I had sent, it was whatever, like beginning of December, and Dave's like, hey, can we talk about this in January? I'm like, sure. So this is actually one where I wrote a little bit, but more than anything, a book that my team and I are doing right now. I've read it 4 times. I don't know if you guys, Everyday Hero Manifesto. The stuff that's in there is pretty amazing. And I've never actually on these calls, I don't think I've ever just read Sunday Thoughts, but if it's okay with you, let me read it. And then, and then we can talk about it. It's a little bit of me. It's a lot of him. So, I'm going to skip the first part, but well, actually, no, I'll just start. So one of the benefits of being the patriarch of our team is I get a little more say in the books we choose to read. Right now, we're reading one of my favorites and one that I've talked about a few times, The Everyday Hero Manifesto, written by Robin Sharma. He's the same guy that wrote the 5 a.m. Club. I find when I read his stuff, he challenges me to compare myself to his words, his examples. We've probably all heard the great quote from Theodore Roosevelt, comparison is the thief of joy, and I agree with it to an extent. I do believe to sit back and compare your life to someone else's, what someone else has versus what you have, what you possess versus what someone else possesses, isn't good. You're either making yourself feel better for being superior or feeling worse for being inferior. Either outcome isn't good for the development of your soul. There is a different kind of comparison, though, one where you're measuring yourself to better yourself, to determine where you're on the right track, where you're stumbling, and actions you can take to improve. I think it's also healthy to admire and understand someone else. We hear of fixed versus growth mindset. To compare yourself to someone or something for the sake of feeling good or bad about yourself is a fixed mindset. To compare yourself to someone, something else to better yourself is a growth mindset. Going back to the book, Robin Sharma in chapter 83 talks about gargantuan competitive advantages. He calls them GCAs. He bases them off of two themes that he believes is occurring in the world today. The first theme is what he calls the mass mediocritization of humanity. The second theme is the collective deprofessionalization of business. And then these GCAs, I'll give you his G7 GCAs with a few tidbits of quotes, first reciting the whole chapter. So this is me going off script. So just talking about what, he's saying that there's two themes that are happening: mass mediocrization of humanity, and the other one, the collective deprofessionalization of business, and then how these 7 gargantuan competitive advantages counter those two themes. So the first one is always be early. It's smarter to show up for a meeting a whole hour in advance than even 1 minute behind. Number 2, clear out diversions. Build your day and lead your life around only a few major pursuits, so your gifts and talents remain concentrated around your priorities instead of scattered around many trivialities. Number 3, under promise. And by the way, if you think about these, like if you're a lender, if you're a realtor, like imagine this going into your business and how you conduct yourself on a daily basis. So number 3, under promise, then over deliver. Deliver 10 times more value than they have any right to expect, from initial approach to well after the sale. Do this impeccably on an ongoing basis, and the entire marketplace will most certainly beat a path to your door. Number 4, protect absolutely world-class standards. The standards you hold your life to are profound indicators of the levels of success, influence, and everyday heroism you'll reach. Here's the valuable rule to play with: we get in life not what we wish for, but which we settle on. Number 5, pursue granularity versus superficiality. Going granular means rejecting all sloppiness and resisting any hint of laziness by doing your job and rolling through your personal life in a near flawless, immensely skilled, yet wonderfully soulful way. What an advantage. By the way, my word for 2025, in part because of this book, is granularity. Number 6, show aliveness. In talking of a barista he encountered, only his body was in the shop, going through the motions with little passion. Oh, what an important word it is: presence. In our age of endless technological interruption, the biggest gift you can give a customer, as well as any human, is the wholeness of your attention. Last one, number 7, come to play. The moment you get to work, it's showtime. You're only as good as your last performance, and everything you do either brings you nearer to greatness or closer to ordinary. The true impact of the 7 requires the whole chapter, but hopefully you can get a glean on a high level understanding. The important part for me, and hopefully for you, is this gives me an opportunity to compare my own efforts, attitude, mindset, processes, passion for my job to these 7 GCAs. In some area, I can pat myself on the back for being on the right track. In other areas, I can give myself and our team constructive feedback on where we need to improve by comparing our efforts to these words and examples. So that's it.
That's it. That's like mic drop. Like so much value right there. And immediately, where my mind went, Hunter, is that each of these 7 points could be videos that you share on social so that your reach can go even further. Challenge? You're going to accept the challenge? Maybe?
Dave's always, yes. I mean, I just freaking need to, Deborah. Like, I'm so weird about that. But
you know what? We'll play around with what you just did, because for anyone listening, all you'd have to do is pull up your Zoom, have a meeting of 1, hit record, talk to your camera like you would as if it was a client, and you can make content just from everything that you have right now in front of you. And if you don't worry about comparison, don't judge yourself, be kind to yourself, and just look at it as it's another form of distribution to inspire and impact more people. That's all. That easy, right?
Yeah, I got stuck on that first part of it, right? The mass mediocrity of humanity and the deprofessionalization of business. Like just that piece of it right there is one of those things where, as someone who always looks at myself and says, gosh, again, I'm not comparing myself to others. So I've definitely moved beyond that, which is great. I mean, certainly I look at someone who's got a cool Ferrari and think, gosh, that'd be great since I drive a Ford Expedition. But, but I don't live in that world, right? I feel pretty blessed with where I'm at financially and, could do what I want to do. I just make different choices than some, but I really do think that there is this whole idea of mediocrity. And I think there's this whole idea of days where I'm not great. And so to me, it's a really good reminder that he gives these points that you can sort of look at. And then I think look at it from a professionalism perspective, especially when you look at the part of the, under promise, over deliver, right? I think it's really easy for us to be better than our competition. But it goes back to that word that you laid out early on. It's consistency. Like, are we really consistent in what we do? The crazy part is I look at that and say, gosh, I could deliver 10x in the mortgage business by just being consistent with my word and actually doing the things I know that people expect. So those were my, kind of my initial thoughts. But I agree with Deborah. I mean, we could spend a whole call on each one of those points.
Yeah. I think to your
Well,
last
and
point, I don't know, I was running and I was listening to a podcast, and Ed Milet made the comment of when we're in the top 10%, we're 50% of the way there. And I thought that was such a good way to look at, like, it doesn't, when, like, Todd, when you talk about the word, right, mediocre, by the way, it's not a real word. I think he made the word up because I tried to look it up. Mediocritization. Obviously we all know the word mediocre, but when you look, like, our industry as a whole, we play at a mediocre level, right? Like, to be in the top, I want the best for everybody, but I mean, like, from my perspective, to be in the top 10% of the loan business isn't that hard if you're just working on being better than mediocre. You'll be in the top 10% of the lending industry. To get to the level of the top 1%, that takes consistently being good at your job, treating it, I mean, like, looking at these 7, gargantuan competitive advantages. And like you said, constantly reminding yourself, right? I mean, it's the consistency, I think, for all of us. I mean, just even talking to Deborah now, right? The last time I was on this call, Deborah was on here challenging me on social media, which is not something I want to do. But every time I'm with and around Deborah, I say to myself, I need to reach out to Deborah, and then I don't, right? And that's what we all do on so many different things. Like, my Sunday thoughts are my consistency, but there's so many of other things that are not consistent like that. And it's just like, how do we train ourselves to be consistent with these things that we know are going to improve and better our ability to provide value to the people around us in any shape or form?
Well, I found what was interesting is I went back and watched your July interview, and that's when Dave was big on talking about the NAR settlement, and you were discussing kind of where you thought your numbers would be, where y'all were at in July, and then where you were hoping to be, kind of by the end of the year. And one, you said that your first quarter was not great and you thought you were on track to maybe do 130 million. Although at the very start of the year, last year, your goal was like 150 to 160. And then in November, you were interviewed again about, what plays to run for November, December, and you had already done 131 million. And I was sitting there thinking, here's this guy who runs a division of like 190 LOs, which is, that in itself is a lot of questions. It can be a lot of time nurturing, putting out fires, but then you're also a massive producer with your own clients. You're doing your own lead intake calls. And you're, how in the world would you have this much time? And yet you blew past the 130 mark and ended up finishing right at, the 150. And it's like, if you can do that, and you're always so humble. Like, I love how you were talking about Jeremy and Denise and some of the takeaways that, just from investing your time and watching this channel, and how, you can seek to improve. And so my challenge to those who are listening to this is, don't compare yourself to maybe where Hunter is right now. Like, if you're on your chapter 2, it's not a fair comparison if you're comparing it to his chapter 17, or, yeah, you've been in the business 18 years. But you've shared along the way that like you didn't always use Mortgage Coach. Like it
No.
took a while. And so what would you tell yourself from a, producing branch manager who has all these responsibilities, a large team, running a division? What did you not know like 5 years ago that you wish you would have been more consistent on, that had you done that, maybe you would be at a different place today?
I think, I mean, and one, I got to say, like we talk about like running the division and stuff. I mean, I do that. There's people around me that are also helping run the division that are freaking amazing, right? I mean, that's the other, I mean, that's one major thing I would say is like, you have to surround yourself with high caliber, high quality people because, I think what I've accepted now is like all of the quotes and like they're all here for a reason, right? I mean, like how many times have we heard I think it was Jim Rome, who said we're the five, we're the average of the five people that we surround ourselves with the most. That's true, right? Like that's just flat out true. And so the question, I mean, the tactical question on like things that I wish, well, how about this? Pursue granularity versus superficiality. That's to me 5 years ago what I wish I knew how to do. Like I always played around Mortgage Coach, right? I always had my team put the TCAs together for me. I always, and by the way, still do, right? And it drives me nuts that I don't know how to. Like it's stupid. Now, some people would say, well, Hunter, whatever, at your level, you shouldn't be doing that anyway. I think there's a certain level of confidence, and I think the loan officer moving forward in today's environment, you have to know how to do your job. You can't just wine and dine people and expect loans to come in. You have to understand guidelines. I mean, you have to be very good at your job. So, literally, when I think of what I needed to do 5 years ago, what I wish I would have done 5 years ago, it's probably dive into the granularity on different topics that are important to me, and probably get more clarity, which I'm still trying to get more clarity on. God, it's funny, all going in, like, I'm not even trying to use this, but I mean, like, when we talk about just him talking about be specific on different things that you're working on, right? Like, I can't work on every single thing in the loan business, right? I need to work on leadership. I need to work on sales training for loan, I mean, sales training, coaching, whatever you want to call it. I need to work on better processes for our clients. I need to work on some balance of automation where we stay in front of our clients without having them feel like they're on a drip campaign. Like those are those things that are important. And then I need to weed out everything else. Like, and I wish I was clearer on that today. I wish it was a priority for me 5 years ago, and I don't think it was.
Well, and so what I love as you're listening to this, right? You've got humility, right? You've got somebody who is such a high achiever, but he's still looking for the areas to improve in, right? And so I think that I want you all to be thinking through, right? We've talked a lot on this call before about the book by Ben Hardy and Dan Sullivan, The Gap and the Gain, right? We all look for the gap of what we're not getting versus looking at the gain from what we've actually achieved, right? Because we all know that it's a little more daunting to be looking at a big goal. And one of the things that we're really fortunate when we do these calls is we always have on these amazing producers. And so oftentimes I do find that, back in the day where I wasn't an 80 or $100 million producer, I looked at those people since that was my goal. So first off, I know it's not all your goal to be a $100 million producer. I know a lot of people who just want to be a $25 million producer, or $20 million producer and do great. And I totally believe that whatever that goal is what your goal needs to be. It doesn't need to be something bigger, but don't feel overwhelmed, right? I would think that the action to take today is to think about just one spot of something we've discussed here or that you've heard over the past couple of weeks that you think you could be more consistent, have that granular focus that Hunter's talked about and just knock that out, right? Just one new habit at a time versus thinking you've got to do all of it at once. Because I keep talking to loan officers who sit and watch. They're great spectators of these calls. And, we're super grateful you're here. That's our vanity metric, are the eyeballs. But it's not the metric we want. We want the impact metric, right? Dave's been talking about income and impact this year. And so for us, we really want to impact you and your income. And so I would just be thinking about what's that one thing today that you can write down, put it on that Post-it note on your computer, put it in the top of your Win by Noon planner for you Win by Nooners that you can start working on for however long it takes to be consistent in that before you add that that next thing. And I don't know what that is for you. It could be something totally different, but like I totally resonate with what Hunter said. I mean, yeah, I think everyone who runs a mortgage team thinks wishes we had better technology to make it look like we weren't sending canned email out to people. So let me know when you solve that one, Hunter. I'm in.
Yeah, yeah, I will. And by the way, to your point too, it's like it's super important to balance. I was talking to one of our loan officers, and I like him a lot. But he doesn't produce where he wants to produce. He's not even close to where he wants to produce. And then I talk about being a better loan advisor. So he starts talking about like mastering guidelines. You absolutely need to master guidelines, and it's smart to do that. But if you don't have any leads, mastering guidelines isn't your number one priority, right? So I think at the end of the day, we have to understand. My son right now, it's funny. My son right now, he's a junior at University of Arizona. I did a Sunday Thoughts on him. He worked for a buddy of mine that sold porta potties. My son 2 years ago was going door to door selling porta potties, and now he's working for our company in Tucson. And he and I are working on his scripts because he's going to have Derek, my buddy, is going to have him go out and go door to door, getting dentists. We got a new product where it's a doctor loan that now goes for dentists and vets and chiropractors, right? Before they were kicked out of being able to do doctor loans. So now Jack's going to go around and we're working on the script of what he needs to say and the why behind what he's saying and why it's, how you talk to a veterinarian about not being, you don't want to offend them to say, well, you're not really a doctor, which is why you couldn't get a doctor loan in the past.
Whoa.
But no. I'm not saying that they're not
Yeah.
a doctor. I'm just saying, like, from a guideline perspective, how do you bring it back into the equation to say, hey, these products weren't always available and now they are, without offending someone, to say these were only available to MDs and now they're available to everybody, right? So, but my point is, like, you have to know where you're weak right now, and you can't hide behind something that's not going to help you get to, like, we all need more leads to start, right? Like, get a lead and then go focus on the guidelines and study them to come up with solutions. But don't go study in a room for 4 hours on guidelines and chat GBT, whatever, and then not have any leads, right? So anyway, we have to Todd's point. I mean, it's like, don't just focus on being busy. It has to be real productive work that you're doing to bring in, from my perspective, for the people that we're leading, loans. I mean, that's what we do, right? From a career perspective, we do loans, we need leads. So.
Okay. So that brings up a question for me then, that Todd, and you jump in on this as, founder of Win by Noon, but we talked about how your first quarter last year wasn't fantastic. And, when we started the call, you said you have LOs that you wish were doing more. And so why is it, do you think, or what are you telling your LOs, your division, about, like, we're getting up for spring home buying season. A lot of us know what to do. Why don't we do what we know to do consistently to get the results that we want? Is it not having a plan? Like, and then what would you say should be on that, before noon? How do you win before noon in the first quarter?
This all sounds like I'm just making this up because of our call right now, but like, I was talking to Moira in my office before this call, and she was talking about that. I said, how was your week? She said, it's been great. I've got activity. I'm meeting with new realtors and I'm getting leads and opportunities from new realtors, but I'm realizing I'm not able to make my calls. Right. And I literally brought up Todd. I'm like, it's crazy. I'm doing a call right now with the guy that wrote the book, Win by Noon. And that's what we have to do. Like, you have to set, I mean, it's such a simple concept, but I mean, we can talk about it 1,000 times, where it's just like, we all know what we have to do. Deborah's point, right? You have to make X amount of contacts by noon with value, right? Not just make contacts. Calling Todd to say, hey, just wanted to check in on you. That doesn't provide any value, right? Calling someone to update them on leads, to review the leads that they sent, calling someone to talk about a product, buy before you sell in different markets, whatever it is, giving somebody a market update. I think I was on a call yesterday with JJ Mazzo and Lisa Wells. I love Shayla, but I missed, Shayla was on here talking about something like the 100, what's it called?
The Hammer 100.
The Hammer 100. It's in my email, right? Like that is something that everybody should do, right? You can't get people on. I tell everybody, you got to get on the phone. You got to be face to face. I believe in that. But to send someone a text saying, I need you for 3 minutes to talk about something is genius, right? Like those are the types of things that people need to do, and they need to get some wins under their belt to see that it's working. Um, and you need to be around people that are going to hold you accountable, right? We have a team, we have a division contest right now where every single morning everyone get like the entire division can see how many credit apps you started with, how many loans you locked, how many fundings you, I mean, like every single day. And we've got teams orchestrated around this so that we're all in it together to produce more, right? So I mean, you need to you most people, including me, are not totally accountable to themselves. You have to have people around you that will hold you accountable, that are legitimate. When we talk about like I mean, they don't need to produce to be an A player, but they like an A player to me is someone that will consistently hold you accountable to help you continue to do what you both know you need to do to be successful.
Well, yeah, I love it. In fact, Deborah and I are excited. We'll have JJ and Kimberly Mazzo in our Exactly What to Say certification next week in Orange County. That'll be two of our guests, so that'll be exciting, along with Dave and some other cool folks. Someone's asking about the Hammer 100 in there. Well, I'll tell you what, Dave, if you didn't notice, he did a post on this. We've committed, he and I, we're going to do the Hammer 100 on Thursday, the February 6th. So like think pre-Super Bowl, right? Super Bowl weekend. Who knows which of the two teams are going to make it to the Super Bowl. But you know, it's going to be your Super Bowl if you choose to join Dave and I. And this is interesting because some of you know, a couple years ago, I did 100 realtor calls. And of course, I opened my mouth. I said, I'll do it once. You were all on Zoom watching me do it. So I actually did it. It took me all freaking day. But I actually committed to do it 4 weeks in a row, and I did it 4 weeks in a row. And it was a lot of work. Now, this is different than that. This is even harder. The Hammer 100 is having 100 quality conversations with people. It's not 100 contacts like if you've been through Keller Williams Bold. Like there, someone answers the phone and says hello, and you say, hey, I'm a realtor, and they go click. They count that as a contact. This is 100 conversations with people where you actually ask for business. Think about that. This is overwhelming. And it means you're probably going to have a list of at least 200 people to call. Now, I'll tell you, my mortgage team did the Hammer 100 last Friday alongside of Shayla and her team. And on one hand, you could say they failed. My business partner, he'd made 100 calls and talked to 65 people. You could say he failed. He didn't talk to 100 people. It took him 13 and a half hours. He talked for 9 hours on the phone. One of his conversations was 30 minutes. I'm like, dude, you're never going to get 100 conversations if one of them's 30 minutes. But he's just a nice guy. But he talked on the phone for over 9 hours that day. And the crazy part is that if I pulled up the pipeline report from our pre-underwriter who's reviewing applications, it's the busiest it's been since refis were falling out of the sky in COVID. It's because we had 4 people making calls most of the day. Even the people who only talked to 25 people, guess what? They've got leads and applications now as a result of doing it. And so I think it's a super exciting idea. I'm petrified to do it. It's probably going to take 13, 14 hours. My goal is not going to be to fall short of the 100 conversations. I love what you just said, Hunter, is the text, hey, can I jump on a call with you for 3 minutes? Because that's a lot of it. I was one of Shayla's calls. She got me on the phone. I totally forgot she was doing it. And she's like, hey, I got 2 minutes. I'm doing my Hammer 100. You got a referral for me. Like she was super quick. But I don't think that's how it's going to be. And so ultimately, I would love to invite you all to join us. And then I'm sure Dave and I will do a call where we talk specifics about how I prepped my team's lists, how I'll encourage you all to prep your list. But just know, I think it's a huge opportunity because in the end, here's what we know, right? It's a game about relationships. And the more people that you actually talk to, the more transactions you're going to have. And I've just seen this over and over again when I've done group coaching and people reporting their numbers to me. You know, it's not a mystery. The people who talk to the most people have the most transactions. The people who talk to the least people, transactions, have the least business. It's just unfortunately the way that it is. And I'll help you guys figure out who you should talk to. And then, you know, probably Deborah and I can come up with some more cool of exactly what to say scripts.
The other thing, Todd, that we talked about yesterday, and I don't want to say much because I don't want to sabotage Shayla. I mean, Shayla's freaking amazing, but one of the things I thought about was making sure that the conversation that you're having, if it is a 3-minute conversation, that the content that you are delivering, you have to think about it down the road, so that if you were going to make that call again 30 days from now with the same script or the same, do you have 3 minutes? Like, can I get 3 minutes? That they're going to talk to you versus avoid you.
No, that's super huge, right? I think if you're calling a client and you say, "Hey, do you have 3 minutes?" I think it's got to be, what's the update that you know about the market that they're going to want to hear? And number one, and then number two is, what's something that you can invite them to that adds value, right? So for a lot of I'm doing the First Home IQ 10 courses over 10 weeks on Zoom on financial literacy. So anyone who's had kids that are in high school or college, then my team invited them to that. If they were a real estate agent, we've got an event that we're part of in a couple of weeks. They were inviting the realtor to that. And so, yeah, I agree with you, Hunter. Absolutely. I appreciate you calling that out. You got to figure out how you can add value. Because if you're
Right.
going to do it again, my team's actually doing it again in a few weeks. So I'm excited to see him do it a second time.
I love it.
In a perfect world, you would want to do like 20 calls a day before noon, right? Like, and have, because when I first heard that, I was like, wow, how intentional are these conversations? Like, could you really connect and provide value? Or does it feel like, I see all the time people who do these video challenges, and it's like they go live and they're like, oh, it's day 17 of 30 where I'm going live for this video challenge. And it's like people are already like swipe, like nobody cares that you're doing a live video challenge. Please don't say this is day 17 and day 18. Because, when you're thinking of why people get on social, it's not, first of all, no one gets on social and they're like, I can't wait to see an ad or see marketing, or I can't wait to see this live challenge of someone who's going over and over and over, who's fumbling and not really saying anything valuable. It's just noise at that point. So how do you make sure that if you have 100 calls, it doesn't feel like and excuse my terminology, but in my mind, I was like, it's like a hit it and quit it. Like it's not a intimate, I'm sorry, Todd, this is where my brain goes of all my examples because it's relatable, but like, how do you make sure it's meaningful? And would it be better to do micro sprints, than the full marathon? You know what I mean? That was just what came to my mind. Sorry to throw you off with this.
Here's what I would say. You're right. Everyone should be doing that, right? I mean, my standard is 10 quality conversations with real estate agents a day, right? And so I think that that's a whole lot better than trying to talk to 50, at one time in one day. It's the consistency game. I think the uniqueness about the Hammer 100, at least what I see with my team, number one is it was this gargantuan effort that they prepared for. So they probably wouldn't have prepared their list of 200-300 people to reach out to if they weren't preparing for that. I couldn't get them to prepare for that in December or November or get them motivated. Now they've got the list. And then my encouragement is to be following up. There's people on that list you didn't talk to. And so now your goal is over the next 30 days is to have a conversation with those folks. And yes, you're better off knocking out 10 conversations or 20 conversations if you can manage to block that time consistently. Yeah, that's a huge win. And so my want for all of you is the same want I had for my team is, hey, let's do this big, huge push in a day so that one is we're prepared for the rest of the year. Two is even if you do a halfway there job, which is what my team did, you've created this momentum and then now you've got the list to keep the momentum going. And so that's, I think, what the beauty of it is. And so if you feel like your January's kind of stuck, then jump in with Dave and I. And I'm not going into it thinking, well, if I get 50 conversations, I'll be happy. I'm going in it to win it, right? I'm going to go in there and I'm going to be competitive with myself. Going back to the conversation we had this morning, comparison versus comparison. I'm not going to compare myself to anyone else who's making conversations. I'm not going to try to be Dave, although yes, I'm going to try to be Dave. I'm actually going to do this because I think it's going to move the needle for me personally. And then but going back to what you said, Hunter, it only matters if I'm adding value along the way, right? I mean, if I'm just calling people, Shayla could call me and say, hey, I'm on my conversation, I'm doing this because I knew she was doing it. She knew I knew she was doing it. She knew my team was doing it. So she had that leeway versus, my business partner, Matt, who got stuck on a 30-minute call. And he said it was an amazing call. And he said he wouldn't have traded it for the world. So I do love all aspects of it.
Yep. I think, and my point is the purpose and the process, right? The process is creating the list. The process is making the 100 calls, but like you have to be thinking about the purpose and not every single person is the same. I'm probably more like on Todd's partners. You know, it's like, granted, if you're talking, I mean, if someone wants to talk to you and they are someone that brings value into your life and hopefully business primarily was during business hours, then stay on the phone, right? I mean, it's like, you're not trying to, as soon as I know that someone's asking me for something and then they're trying to get off the phone with me, that drives me nuts, right? But it also depends on who that person is. If Shayla called me with my relationship with Shayla, then I would be like, yeah, let me think about it. Boom, boom, boom. And here you go. Right. So I think there's people have the purpose is being aware of who you are calling and being aware of what relationship you have with that person and what you can and can't say to them, but always to provide value. If you just take, right. I mean, it's like realtors. I mean, why wouldn't they hate lenders? So that's great. Yeah. Every time you call me, you ask me for a lead, nothing back. You just ask me for, hey, you got anyone you want me to talk to? You know, it's like not a good business strategy.
So what would you say from like a top 3, conversations to have if it's, we're almost at the end of January, let's say it's a Q1 strategy. What are the most intentional conversations you would be having with your database or with your partners to be able to have those either 10 quality conversations a day, or maybe it's 20, or to have the 100 in one day? What should people be talking about?
I don't know if anyone has done this, but I mean, one thing we did is we sent closing statements out to every single one. I went out and proactively said to our clients, one of the things that we do for our clients is we always want to be proactive in helping you prepare for your taxes. We would like to know if you would like us to send us your closing statement. Instead of automatically sending them, we ask them, would you like us to? It makes them engage with us. The number, the last time I checked, the number was somewhere, it was like 80%. Like 80% of the people replied to us that they want us to send them this. We took more time. We looked at where their interest rate was, right? Like these are the things where people are like, oh, that takes too much time. It's like, you're not closing any freaking loans. You have time, you know? So that's the other problem, right? Hopefully they have a few to send them out to, but like actually look at their loans, right? Like, hey, just so you know, we locked you last year at 7.25. Everything is still trending where it doesn't make sense to refinance. We'll continue to look at things for you. We'll reach back out in 3 months, right? It just gives you, that would be one thing of value, right? For me in my market, buy before you sell, right? I mean, it's something that we always talk about. A lot of people don't know, like that 3-minute conversation would be, hey, Todd, the reason I asked for 3 minutes is you see stuff in the mail, you see stuff on videos, you see stuff. I wanted your undivided attention to tell you our realtors that are winning right now understand buy before you sell. Here's how it works. Here's how we do it. Tell the client to call me. I'll walk them through that. But every time someone says that they can't buy before they sell, they're likely wrong. So I'll just have a preliminary conversation. Wanted to know if you had any questions for me right now. No, good, right? I mean, another one for me is just, I mean, these are relationships that I know, but calls that I've been making is truly just understanding what they're trying to accomplish in 2025, right? Like, what are your primary goals for 2025? I want to know, I want to see if I can help you and just writing them down, right? That's the other thing. You got to write stuff down so that when you go back and talk to them, like if you tell me your goal is to close 40 transactions in 2025, I should probably know when I call them in June that that's what they're trying to do, right? One of a guy, I'll skip his last name, but Brian, one of his favorite things about our relationship is I sent him he still has a framed picture of me saying, I will help you get to 40 units. I'm looking forward to working with you. And sure enough, he closed like 42 loans or 42 purchases, and it's on his desk, right? I mean, so those types of things where, get back into making people feel cared for.
I think that's so important. I think that's so important. Sorry, Deb, I saw you smiling and shaking your head. I was waiting for you to go. I saw the wheels turning in your head.
Well, just it's the whole show me that you know me button. And, my concern with, AI and automation is that we automate too much, which then creates less participation from your sphere and your audience that you want to influence. And so anytime it feels like you're on this conveyor belt and that you're not really being uniquely seen, even though you may have heard this story a million times by a million different clients, and it's not really anything new to that client, it's new for them. There's a circumstance that may have changed in their life that just listening will allow them to feel uniquely seen and heard. And then they trust you because they feel like you actually get them. And so I can't express enough of how important it is to have more curiosity driven conversations that are led with empathy. And then, to Hunter's point, writing it down. Because if you're anything like me, my memory is like a flea. I cannot, if I don't write it down and have it in a CRM, I will forget. I don't even know what I ate yesterday. I don't even know what day it is. No, it's Friday, but you guys know what I mean. So when you have that next conversation, nobody wants to feel like you're having to repeat and waste time and go back through a scenario that you really probably should have, kept up with. And when you're making the next call, feels like you're like helping them on the journey, not repeating the past.
Yeah. And I would say too, just, I mean, like the simplicity of just creating a task every single time, right? Every single time you create a task to talk to the next person. If I just talk to this realtor, put it in my task to talk to them again in 30 days, in 2 weeks, whatever. If I happen to talk to them 5 times the next week, then when that reminder goes off, I'm just like, well, I already did my job. I'm good. Right. But I mean, it's just like people like, it's like have your day set up where it's just, you just structure it where the things that are important, the calls that you need to make, whatever, like it's just showing up in your calendar. So
Yeah, that's a ninja move, right? Those of you who are like, well, what's a task, right? You can do that in Outlook. You can do that in your
yeah,
CRM. You could do it on a spreadsheet, right? You could literally put all these people on a spreadsheet. When I did my 100 call day, everyone's like, oh, Todd, you have a dialed in CRM. Well, yeah, I do. But that doesn't mean all I did for that was to prove everyone wrong is I moved it all into a spreadsheet and I just created a last conversation date, right? Result, voicemail, talk to, next call date. So then I could now go in and I can sort the spreadsheet by next call date. So if today I pull it up and it says call Hunter, I know to call Hunter. And then my ninja move, because my brain is not the brain of someone who remembers things, it would say what I talked to him about the previous time. So it's super easy for me to, talk to Louis Martinez about his daughter Mila and know that she started a new high school and find out how that went because it's in there. I just happen to remember Louis because I've done so many loans for him, and he's my go-to example every time I talk about the life of my database. And so there's just so many systems you can create to make it so that you are great, and there's systems you can use to make yourself look great that create the consistency. You just have to actually decide what that system is and start using it.
and do it. Just do it.
And removing distractions, like that goes back to your whole comparison, your Sunday insights is what are the things getting in your way? It could be mindset. It could be you comparing yourself to the top producer in your office in a toxic way. I've shared with you guys many times that was my biggest hurdle is like when I got into the industry, I had an identical twin who was like a local celebrity that everybody knew, who had 10 years of experience on me. I was a teacher before. And I thought, why would anyone choose me? Like, we look alike, we sound alike, we have the same DNA, we had the same products, same branch. And I really struggled with like, I didn't believe in myself. And I know, Hunter, you talk a lot about how it is a conviction that when you guys are meeting with partners or with clients, that you are the best lender and option for them. Like you are to make it easy and make it better than had they had gone with somebody else. And I was comparing myself, my chapter 1 to someone's chapter 20, which is what led me to building personal brands and marketing, because I thought if I could figure out what my X factor is with someone who I shared the womb with, then you guys can do it too. Okay. It was hundreds of thousands of dollars later in therapy and in coaching, but it paid off. And you've got to figure out what do you have a conviction about? And if you don't have it, then I would say you've got to start there, because oftentimes that's the very distraction or roadblock that could be getting in your way of not making the calls, is because you don't believe in yourself.
Yeah.
And a lot of times I feel like that's why people aren't even on social. It could be they don't like the way they look or they sound, but they also deeply rooted may not feel worthy of the success. And so if you don't stop and pause, and that's what I love about the One by Noon planner that I still use and track and can reflect of like, where am I sucking is usually the mental conversation I have with myself. Where do I need to improve? Where am I allowing ego to get in the way? Like, what was my motive here? Were my intentions pure? Like, sometimes my word choice is colorful and I'm always hardest on myself. And so for those of you from like a taking action standpoint is, what is it you believe to be true of your value? And if it's not where you want it to be, what are you willing to do about it every day consistently to be excellent? The excellent version for you of what you want to be known for and the value you want to bring to your market.
I agree. And I also think, you know, for people that are, it's like, you know, you guys say I'm humble. I mean, I have insecurities, right? I mean, I don't know. It's almost like, you know, my two favorite words are humble. Like if I was ever to be known as something, I would love to be known as humble and confident, but it's usually like insecure slash humble, you know, equals, you know, confident in some hours of the day and, you know, feeling like who you just explained, you know, I think for everybody too, there's some peace in knowing that you're not, I mean, I don't mean this to be like a frick pep talk, but I mean, it's like you're not alone, right? Every person, including me, feels that way of what value do I bring? Like what value, but it's a challenge, like turn it into a challenge, right? And if you're, you know, if you're talking about comparison, like, well, how do I compete against Hunter when he does X amount of volume? You talk to people about the fact that I've been at it for 20 years and I don't want to work an open house on a Saturday and Sunday. And maybe you got to talk to a team member instead of me. You know, I mean, that's like you can sabotage your competition and be valuable to a lot of different home buyers out there and realtors that don't want to work with large producers. Um, but understand what your value is, not compare yourself to what you don't have to someone else. You do have value. And if you think about it long enough, if you determine you don't, then you shouldn't be doing this, right? I mean, it's like at some point you got to make the decision to, you know, to fix it or you know, it's like we talked about, I don't know when it's harsh, but it's like coach people up or coach them out, right? I mean, it's like you got to, at some point, you got to determine whether or not this is the right path for you.
Well, let me highlight something real quick and we'll go into kind of wrap up mode. Deb, I'm going to let you close us out today. But you know, to what Hunter just said, you got to sell what you have, right? You got to sell what you have. You can't worry about someone else's loan products, someone else's rates, but I think you got to sell what you have from a team perspective. When I went from me taking all the calls and handling all the clients myself to having a loan partner who did, I lost not just my number two referral source, I lost my number one referral source. They wanted me only. They wouldn't give that person a chance because in their mind, it wasn't me. And it was unfortunate because the other person I think did as good or better job than I did. But you absolutely have an ability to go sell yourself against other producers for what you have. You just have to find the person who's looking for what you deliver. All right. So Hunter, what are your final words of wisdom before I let Deborah close us out?
I always go back to, Deborah mentioned it. I tell my business partners, you need to believe that you're going to be more successful with me as your lender, or you shouldn't use me. I know I'm not going to go through what all those things are. That's a challenge that I would give to everybody that listens to this is what are your, when the realtor says, okay, well, what do you mean? You have to have an answer to that, right? So I would challenge people to understand what are the tactics behind that. And I mean, I'll just rip, you know, for us, it's customized pre-approval letters every time. It's Mortgage Coach every single time with the address of that property, with the exact purchase price, so they see their exact numbers, right? So we don't have to talk about locking the next day because they saw the rates the day before, assuming things didn't change. Calling listing agents, thank you. Like all of those things, I know that's what makes me more valuable than 99% of my competition. So be clear for everybody listening when you're trying to identify what makes you more valuable to your business partner compared to anyone else. Know what that is. Have an answer for that.
Love it. Love it. And those are all things that you can replicate, right? You just have to do it and be consistent with it.
Well, and just to put a bow on that, Todd, I think it's the perfect time to plug Win by Noon. That if you guys haven't gotten your Win by Noon planner, and I know some people like to do things electronically, but there is value in writing things down and having a vision of what you want to accomplish for the year. The planner breaks it down per quarter, and then you track your days and you win by noon, and you can reflect and see and measure like where with just a little bit of refinement could I improve. That's going to make a big difference for the goals that I want to accomplish this year. But if you don't have the plan and you don't have a vision of where you want to be, and it could be from a personal development standpoint as well as from a numbers standpoint, then you don't know what plays to execute because you don't even know what field you're on. So take the time, go to Win by Noon, get your planner, make sure that you've signed up for the Sunday Thoughts. If you haven't already done so, go to sundaythoughts.com. Make sure you do the www. Apparently that has to be done. And then there was a question about where to watch this, guys. All of these recordings are always uploaded within about a day to the Mortgage Coach YouTube channel, where you can subscribe and it will notify you as soon as they're uploaded. And then, you know, just continue to support us online. And if you're interested in exactly what to say, reach out to either Todd or I. We have another certification coming up in May, and we'd love to put you on the waiting list.
All right. Thanks, Hunter. Deborah, on
Thanks.
behalf of Dave and the
Love
Career
it.
Trust Engine, we are out. We'll see you next week.
All right, everyone.
Thank you.
Take care.